He intended, he said, to devote the rest of his life to learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. Okay, in the chat, are there any factual bits of information that we know about Boxer? So, Rahul says he's weak and his intentions are to be smart. Absolutely. Yeah, we know that he's weak. Um, because he says if he made a good recovery, so he clearly is weak. He may have had an accident as he's recovering. Yeah, so a factual bit of information is that he's recovering. It says there. Anything else? Ahmed says he's injured. Absolutely, he is. He's not very intelligent, and he's hopeful and attentive. Yeah, all three are great facts. Anything else before I go through them? Because there's a number of things you'd have here. Okay. So what I said is he's clearly recovering slash ill slash injured. We know that. He never had leisure. He looks forward to a peaceful life. Both of those are correct. So yeah, it tells us he might expect to live another 3 years. Is a fact. He looks forward to spending time in the big pasture slash. He loved the pasture. It might be the first time he had leisure to study. He hadn't had time to improve his mind recently. He intended to devote the rest of his life to learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. All of those would be acceptable answers. He learned the first alphabetical letters only is correct. It's something you could work out from that. Okay. So, one of the easier questions. Why might Boxer be particularly excited about having leisure to study, do you think? What can you infer about his current situation? Before we even read on, why do you think he's excited for having leisure to study? What might that tell us about his past and about him as a character? Um, he may be uneducated. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. He seems to be stressed or has been stressed his whole life. Possibly, yeah. It could be, yeah, it could be that he's been through a really or a deep hardship and now he's looking forward to some relief, possibly, yeah. He didn't have the chance to study. Yeah, so you're thinking along the right lines here. Think about the point of this book as it's a critique of communism. So all of these things are absolutely right. So yeah, could be this. I put this. Boxer spent his life working, so the idea of leisure is new and exciting. It suggests that he has sacrificed personal growth for labour, now values self-improvement. But uneducated is within that ballpark. Stress within that ballpark. Not having a chance to study, all within that ballpark. All absolutely right. He's not very intelligent, but he's also very resilient and hardworking. Might also show that he wants to teach other animals and benefit from learning himself. Absolutely correct. Nice. Oops, I've accidentally left that there. Didn't mean to. Okay. What can you infer about Boxer's education from the line learning the remaining 22 letters? I think most of you have already covered this, but what would you say? Too forgetful? Possibly. I would just say he's largely uneducated. Um, I mean, if you don't know the 22 remaining 22 letters of the alphabet, it suggests you're not very well read. Or yeah, his highlights he thinks very simplistically and has a lack of intellectual development, possibly. He wants to get smarter. Boxer is not very smart. All correct. Okay. But the challenge in this next question is how does Orwell, the writer, create a sense of irony in Boxer's hopes for the future, do you think? So, where might there be irony in his hopes for the future? And think about that as we read through the next paragraph. Could that be the reason he gets manipulated? Possibly, yes. Okay, it says, however, Benjamin and Clover could only be with Boxer after working hours, and it was in the middle of the day when the van came to take him away. The animals were all at work, weeding turnips under the supervision of a pig, when they were astonished to see Benjamin come galloping from the direction of the farm buildings, braying at the top of his voice. It was the first time that they had ever seen Benjamin excited. Indeed, it was the first time that anyone had ever seen him gallop. Quick, quick, he shouted, come at once. They're taking Boxer away. Without waiting for orders from the pigs, the animals broke off from work and raced back to the farm buildings. Sure enough, there in the yard was a large closed van, drawn by two horses, with lettering on its side and a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting on the driver's seat. And Boxer's stall was empty. The animals crowded around the van. Goodbye, Boxer, they chorused. Goodbye. So, why do you think there's irony in Boxer's hopes for the future? So, what I mean by that is irony in terms of, for example, I'll tell you what I was thinking. Think about what he wants, contrasted to what's actually happened. It says that he's been looking forward to peaceful days, but has that happened? He's in danger, exactly. So there's contrast there. The irony comes from the fact that he wanted a very peaceful future. He wanted to learn and wanted to educate himself, and he was looking forward to it. But that very much contrasts to the reality of the situation, which is quite tragic and harsh. He's being taken away. It tells us that um, Boxer was being put into a stall where they transport horses. So he's been taken away from the farm. So he's not going to get his nice, peaceful days. There's irony there. Okay. In terms of literal questions, who was it that came galloping from the stables? These are the kind of questions you could get at GCSE. I'm not oversimplifying it. I'll wait till I've got a couple of the right answers in. Have a look. Benjamin is correct. It is Benjamin. Yeah, Benjamin comes galloping over. Why were the animals astonished, do you think? Or did it tell us? It's likely that he would spend a really long time in hospital, and instead of being taken away to an actual hospital, he would tragically go to a butcher. Question four challenge. Yeah, it's really tragic, isn't it? Because he's probably gonna get taken and slaughtered. Yeah. They might think he's free. It tells us somewhere in here about them being astonished. Can you remember where it is? It's somewhere in the middle here. It says when they were astonished to see Benjamin come galloping. Nice. It was the first time that they'd ever seen Benjamin excited. It tells us that they'd never seen him gallop before or be excited. Hey. And why was Benjamin annoyed at the other animals? Think what happens down here. It tells us, fools, fools, shouted Benjamin, prancing round them and stamping the earth with his small hooves. Fools, do you not see what is written on the side of that van? Why do you think he's annoyed? He used to be really boring, old, vain character, shows the boxer is the best friend to him. Yeah, it does show that relationship, doesn't it? They did not know where Boxer was heading to. Yeah, but why do you think that he's annoyed at the other animals? I think you're absolutely right, but why would he be shouting fools at them? It tells us, think about what he says in this last line down here. Benjamin may be the only literate one and is annoyed by the animals' idiocy. The animals are naive for the lack of education. Yeah, all of this is perfect. Like, it's alluding to the fact that none of the other animals could probably read what's on the side of the van, and he's the only one that can. And so he's annoyed at them for mistaking the situation because they can't or didn't read what's on the side of the van. He could be sent to the butcher. His friend is being taken away, and the animals are happy. He is using more hurtful words, calling them fools. Yeah, all of that. He's clearly very worried. He's clearly very, he clearly cares about his friend very much. Nice. This is some good stuff. Oh, I didn't hide the answers to these next ones. Let me just do that now, real quick. Let me go up here. Bear with me. I don't want you seeing the answers. Okay, I should have fixed it. Okay. Okay. What does Benjamin's behavior suggest about the seriousness of the situation? I think most of you know the answer to this. You've kind of been alluding to it already. But what do you think his behavior suggests about how serious the situation is? Do you think it is serious? Do you think it's not serious? I mean, somebody above, I can't remember who it was, but somebody already said about being sent to slaughter. Like his it's important and his life is in danger. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It suggests that there's an urgency there, there's fear, because he's annoyed that the others don't recognize the truth immediately. Yeah, absolutely. And they thought it wasn't serious, so he's annoyed. Okay, why do the animals immediately stop working and run back without waiting for orders? What does this reveal about their feelings towards Boxer? His rage, bait, and fury. That's funny. Okay, what about number nine? Any ideas? No ideas. I think it clearly shows their worrying care. I mean, the fact that they're going to try and help him, or at least watch in disbelief, there is a care there. The fact that they didn't wait for orders shows urgency. They knew Boxer was leaving and they miss him. Yeah, it's all about the care, isn't it? Like the fact that they didn't wait for orders, it's urgency, it's panic. So yeah, it shows that they care deeply about him. Almost that there's loyalty there or some form of emotional attachment. They are urgent, and they came for him. Absolutely. Okay. Right. I've got quite a few of these questions today. I think I've got about 25, so let's work through some of these. They get a bit harder towards the end, some more deeper th thinking ones. Okay, right. I'll read the first little bit of this and then we'll go through these. That gave the animals pause, and there was a hush. Muriel began to spell out the words, but Benjamin pushed her aside, and in the midst of a deadly silence, he read Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer and glue boiler, Willingdon. Dealer in hides and bone meal, kennels supplied. Do you not understand what this means? They are taking Boxer to the knackers. Okay, I'll stop there. Firstly, what words were written on the side of the van? This is just a very literal question. Yep, Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer, and glue boiler. Nice. So where do you think they are taking Boxer, or where is the man taking Boxer? Any ideas? Okay, think about the fact that there's horse slaughterer, bone meal, the slaughterhouse and boiler. Yeah, to a slaughterhouse to get rid of him, to his doom. I like that. I mean, it is to his doom, to his death. Yeah, absolutely it is. Nice. So yeah, it tells us the knackers. The knackers is just a euphemism for slaughterhouse. Okay, so why do the animals initially fail to understand what is happening? What does this tell us about their characters? We kind of briefly mentioned this. Um, we said that Boxer clearly is very literate. He can read, but do you think the other animals can? Lack of education, naivety. They can't read. Yeah, absolutely. Like they fail to understand because they are clearly not very intelligent or possibly illiterate. So it reflects their general ignorance and dependence on others. Absolutely, it does. Naive, animals not clever, not educated. Perfect. All of those correct. Okay, right. Um, Why does Benjamin push Muriel aside to read the writing himself, do you think? He's furious nobody can read. Yeah, there's that frustration, isn't there? There's that anger. Why do you think he feels that way? It might take Muriel a long time to read the whole sentence. Exactly. So there's urgency there. He wants to get it sped up quickly so that other animals know what's going on so they can help him. He's angry. He wants to read it out aloud so the animals understand what is going on with Boxer. All of these are absolutely right. So yeah, it's he can read fluently. And so he understands the urgency and he's trying to help the others understand the truth. Okay, I'll read the next bit. A cry of horror bursts from all the animals. At this moment, the man on the box whipped up his horses and the van moved out of the yard at a smart trot. All the animals followed, crying at the top of their voices. Clover forced her way to the front. The van began to gather speed. Clover tried to stir her stout limbs to a gallop and achieved a canter. Boxer, she cried. Boxer, boxer, boxer. And just at this moment, as though he had heard the uproar outside, Boxer's face, with the right white stripe down his nose, appeared at the small window at the back of the van. Boxer, cried Clover in a terrible voice. Boxer, get out quickly. They are taking you to your death. Okay. Why do you think the animals react with a quote unquote a cry of horror? You They get shocked about the fact that Boxer is getting executed. Yeah, they realize their naivety and stupidness because they're showing their emotions. All of these absolutely right. Again, it's that realization. It almost reflects how shocked they are and how they feel they've maybe betrayed their friend because they couldn't read the sign on the side of the van. They get scared and worried. Absolutely. They are terrified. Yeah, all of these correct. So, how does the pacing of the scene change, do you think, when the van begins to move? And what kind of evidence is there to support that? Yeah, it is. Everyone is trying to get Box out of the van and running. It becomes urgent and violent. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So as soon as the cart starts to move, that urgency picks up. So the pacing speeds up. Nice. Anyone else got anything to add? What evidence is there for that increase in pace? Yeah, it is. It gets quicker as the scene becomes more dramatic or chaotic, sorry. Yeah, it's definitely chaos, uproar, isn't there? Yeah, I mean, look at kind of the language and structural techniques that are used. There's a lot of shorter, simple sentences. There's a lot of exclamatives. There's this dialogue that's in there. This really short paragraph. Like the multitude of exclamatives. Yeah, all of these. Violent and chaotic. The pace increases so dramatically as Clover tries to help Boxer, but sadly with Boxer, his weakness would not budge him to get out of the van quicker as it becomes more dramatic. Nice. Okay, so yeah, why do you think Clover's, I was going to put, what do you think Clover's relationship to Boxer is, and how do you know? Is there any evidence? Short sentence, so speed and how quick it is happening. Correct. Any answers for number 16? Okay, some answers coming in. A dear friend to him. Yeah, I definitely would agree. There's a close relationship there. How would you describe their friendship? Clover seems to love Boxer because she is running to save him. Friends. Yeah, I think there's a definite closeness, almost quite protective, in terms of their relationship. They are close. Yeah, it's shown through their actions. The fact that she pushes towards the front, that she screams repeatedly, really shows her deep affection and care and concern, doesn't it? Yeah, all of that. Why does Orwell leave it uncertain whether Boxer had understood? What effect does this have on the reader? Right, let me read the bottom bit. All the animals took up the cry of "Get out, Boxer, get out," but the van was already gathering speed and drawing away from them. It was uncertain whether Boxer had understood what Clover had said. But for a moment later, his face disappeared from the window, and there was the sound of a tremendous drumming of hooves inside the van. He was trying to kick his way out. The time had been when a few kicks from Boxer's hooves would have smashed the van. So, why does Orwell leave it uncertain whether Boxer had understood? What effect does that have on the reader? It makes it like we can only see over the, I'm not sure, over the farm. Is that what I'm supposed to say? Kind of. Boxer was far away and it's probably uncertain as he didn't do anything to escape. Yeah, it could be that he's far. Yeah, it kind of is to do with him being far away. But think about like the effect on the reader. How are we made to feel? Because Boxer is under high pressure and is panicking. They are far. Yeah, I think as a reader, how do you feel by this loss of the character, by this chaos and drama? Anything to add from anybody? Worried. Yeah, I agree. I think there's deep tension and suspense created by this almost cliffhangery ending. Um, yeah, it makes you kind of, as a reader, feel a bit helpless because you can't do anything to aid the situation. And we don't know if Boxer actually understands his fate, which makes it a bit tragic because I kind of, in a way, hope he doesn't understand his fate. Because imagine being led to your death and you know about it. It's horrible. So you kind of hope as a reader that he is left unaware, but equally it makes it tragic because you have a deep sympathy for him. Boxer has no energy due to his injury, makes it dramatic for Boxer, as mentioned, and a very impressive, loyal character with an impressive strength. Makes us feel sympathy, makes the reader worried but also suspicious, panicked and angry. He's going to his end. Okay, how is Boxer feeling? Is there any evidence for this? Any ideas? Do you think, as a reader, he understands? As a personal, obviously personal perspective, what would you say? Do you think he understands his fate or not? No evidence how he feels mentally, but he feels very weak and despaired physically. I agree with that. He was trapped as he is moving his hooves. Yeah, this like drumming of the hooves is almost this claustrophobic atmosphere being created. The tremendous nature of the hooves as well really shows that panic and that fear. In the fact he tries to kick his way out. He's clearly quite weak because a few years prior he would have had the strength to smash the van, but now he's clearly been weakened. Um, he feels kicking the van, close to smashing the van, scared and worried because Clover is shouting that they are taking you to your death. Yeah. So I think Box is likely confused, probably very frightened and desperate. His appearance at the window suggests uncertainty. The tremendous drumming of hooves shows panic, trying to escape, fear, growing awareness of danger. Weak as he's hoping to have a good recovery. Yeah, I remember back to the beginning. That's a really nice callback, actually. That he was recovering at the beginning, so he clearly is in a weak, vulnerable state. Okay, let's read the last bit to Matchwood. But alas, his strength had left him, and in a few moments the sound of drumming hooves grew fainter and died away. In desperation, the animals began appealing to the two horses, which drew the van to stop. Comrades, comrades, they shouted, don't take your own brother to his death. But for the stupid brutes, too ignorant to realize what was happening, merely set back their ears and quickened their pace. Boxer's face did not reappear at the window. Too late, someone thought of racing ahead and shutting the five-barred gate. But in another moment, the van was through it and rapidly disappearing down the road. Boxer was never seen again. Quite a bleak ending, isn't it? Um, Number 19. What do the animals do to try and stop the van? Is there any factual bits? Try and persuade them by being emotive. Who is them? There it is. Appeal to the two horses to stop carrying Boxer to his fate. Yeah, they do, don't they? They call them comrades and they try to appeal to them. Yeah, appeal to the horses pulling the carts. Why are the horses described, do you think, as stupid brutes? Try to persuade the riding horses, closing the gates. Correct. Yeah, why do you think they're called stupid brutes? They were ignorant. They were taking Boxer to his death. Yeah, do you think they understood what they were doing? Do you think they knew that they were taking a fellow horse to be slaughtered? Um, yeah, I mean, ignorance. They were very ignorant. They're too fed up of the torture of a life. They were too ignorant to stop and listen. Possibly. I don't know if it's necessarily like fed up. I don't know. There's not really a right or wrong answer to this. I would argue that they probably didn't know what they were doing. Surely they would have had more empathy and urgency to stop if they did. But yeah, certainly like ignorance, at least. So what I said is they failed to understand what is happening and then continue to pull the van anyway, despite the animal's desperate pleas. This shows their ignorance, lack of awareness, and they do not realize they are helping to take Boxer to his death. Okay. So what is the effect of this final sentence that Boxer was never seen again? As a reader, how does that make you feel? Do you think it's an effective choice of George Orwell, the writer, to end this extract like that? What kind of effect does it have on you as a reader? Is there any effect on atmosphere and the way that it makes you potentially feel? Boxer was gone to forever and nobody saw him, so he's probably going to be slaughtered. Yeah, on a literal level. But how does it make you feel? Is there any sort of emotions that it maybe evokes a bit stronger? Creates intense tragedy as it shows absolutely no hope of saving Boxer, makes the reader feel doomed and sad. Yeah, I agree. It's that doom, that complete lack of catharsis, even the tragedy, the lack of hope. It really is a very bleak ending. The effect is to make the reader hungry to see what happened next. Possibly. I think we probably know what happens next, though. I think he can be taken to the slaughterhouse. He may have died. This makes the reader feel worried and upset, and the short sentence structure shows the tension. Oh, nice. Curious. Oh, someone said Boxer died. Sad faces. I agree. I think if you read the book in full, he's actually a really lovely character. Anyway, why is the detail about the gate being shut too late significant? Now, if we're thinking about what I told you at the beginning in terms of the context of what this book is about, it's about a critique of communism and in society, and about how the lack of education can lead to ignorance. How does the gate being shut too late maybe contribute to that? Yeah, it is. There is no going back. Yeah, it's a very final ending, isn't it? It shows that Boxer's comrades were too late to save him. The animals did not think about it. Yeah, and don't you think that's so sad that they didn't even think ahead to even do that? They didn't even think that was an option. Like their ignorance has led now to his death. Obviously, it's not caused his death because they didn't choose to send him away, but it certainly doesn't help stop it. Um, They were uncoordinated. They can't do anything to fix his problem. Nobody can do anything. They let him down, and now they feel guilty because those innocent horses did not know what they were doing, and now he's gone. They don't go after and leave the chase. Yeah, absolutely. There's this like feeling of guilt, isn't there? This like longing to have done more, and I think it's significant because they miss their opportunity, and it really reinforces the overarching theme of ignorance and the consequences of ignorance. I've done it again. Let me quickly adjust it. No, go back. Okay. Okay. How does Orwell present the idea of ignorance as dangerous? If thinking about the overall message of the theme of the novel, sorry, why is ignorance dangerous? Any ideas? Because it is dangerous. They ignored them and are tempted to kill him. What do you mean by that? In terms of the animals' ignorance, like think about the gate, for example. Think about the horses who didn't know what they were doing, the other animals that couldn't read, the lack of education. It can lead to a terrible mistake, for example, losing someone's life. The fact that the two horses carrying Boxer were ignorant led to Boxer dying. He presents ignorance as a negative sin. They don't care. Ignorance was a minor factor for Boxer's death, but it still made a big difference. All of this is beautiful. Like, yeah, ignorance contributed at least to his death, highlighting how that it can lead to injustice and, like someone said, mistakes to happen. Okay, we've only got a few questions left now. We'll go to 10 past and then we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll GCSE it up. Okay, going back to thinking near the beginning of the text, we're going to start to think a little bit now about the context of the novel and the overall political message. Who do you think are the leaders of the farm? Some said the Sly Man. Not necessarily. I think there's evidence in this maybe paragraph here as to who the leader of the farm is. The pigs, full stop. Absolutely is the pigs. Yeah. I've done it again. I've revealed the answers. Why did I do this? I didn't do any of the things. Never mind. We'll go through these. I hope I've gone through the rest of them. I have. Cool. Clearly, I was rushing these when I did them earlier. So yeah, here's the pigs. There's evidence to that. What can we infer about the pigs from the fact they did not stop to help the van? It's possible that they were something to do with arranging Boxer's betrayal, potentially linking to this idea of corruption and deceit. And if we're thinking about the context of the novel in terms of the political message. It definitely says something about the leaders or the communist leaders. It's trying to describe communism as being corrupt and those leaders being deceitful. They planned out Boxer's death so that animals can't do anything. Absolutely. They are cruel. Really are. Napoleon is leader of the farm. Somebody's read the novel before. Yeah. Okay. So if we briefly, for the last 9 minutes, think about context and then answer some deeper questions. If we're thinking about the actual history or that this book is based on, it's an allegory for the Russian Revolution. And during this time, the Russian people overthrew their king in order to create a fairer society. However, the new government, led by Joseph Stalin, became corrupt and oppressive. So instead of equality, power was taken by a small group of leaders. And George Orwell wrote the novel to criticize the system. So he wanted to show how leaders can abuse power, manipulate others through lies, and exploit the hard-working people. So if any people who've read the book will know that Napoleon, the main pig, represents Stalin, Boxer, the one we've just seen carted away, represents the working class, and the other general pigs are like government leaders, for example. So it's all allegorical. Okay. So, thinking a bit deeper now, what does the description of Boxer's last moments show you about the wider themes of power and corruption, do you think? Any ideas? What about abuse of power? So, in terms of history, this was, I want to say, just before World War II, I think. This was like 1940s. So, I guess mid World War II, maybe just before. Any ideas? How does the last moment of Boxer contribute or show the abuse of power? We just talked about the pigs. Is there anything we might have learnt about the pigs? They use their power on for cruelty, death, and torture. Yeah, the pigs manipulate, don't they? If they've orchestrated this removal of Boxer, it shows almost that he wasn't useful anymore. Like his labor was very useful, but the moment he became injured, they sent him away. It shows us how the minute that he becomes vulnerable, he's no longer useful for the pig's personal gain. And so it's a complete misuse of authority. Ignorance of pigs let out the animals without supervision. They use the power to become rivals. They're full of hatred and selfishness. I like it. In terms of corruption, then, I guess similar sort of points. This idea, if you've read the novel, you'll know about animalism. It's an idea for the promotion of equality, but it is essentially a front for betrayal by the pigs. And in terms of manipulation and deception, sorry, yeah, again, they betrayed Boxer, so they sent him away. Okay, right, we'll get through the last few questions in the last 5 minutes. How does Boxer's fate in this extract act as an allegory for the treatment of the working class in a corrupt political system? Now we're getting to the big boy questions. We're getting to the GCSE literature questions. Any ideas? Anyone want to contribute anything? Any ideas? How does Boxer's fate in this extract act as an allegory for the treatment of the working class? It's fine, we've gone a bit quiet now because we've got to the harder ones, haven't we? I'll show you what I said. Boxer represents or is symbolic of the working class, who, if we're thinking contextually, would have dedicated their lives to labor in order to sort of build society and build a system. But his fate, being sold for slaughter, symbolizes how the corrupt sort of leaders exploit their workers for personal gain and productivity. And then once they're no longer useful, we'll just get rid of them. And despite this lifelong hard work and loyalty to the system, Boxer receives no reward or protection, highlighting the betrayal of those in power. Orwell uses this to critique systems where the working class are manipulated, overworked, and ultimately sacrificed for the benefit of the elite. They take fit, strong, and loyal people. Um, Boxer's fate is sealed because of betrayal, corruption, and rivalry. It highlights how the workers in the Russian Revolution were treated so unfaithfully and strictly. Absolutely. Right. I've got two more questions for you, and then we'll go. So, in what ways does the animal's reaction to Boxer's removal reflect the dangers of propaganda and lack of education in society? I'll give you 30 seconds to think about it, but again, it might be a case of I tell you my answer. Boxer was trustworthy and got betrayed. If I miss a question because someone exactly how many? So we're going to finish it in about 4 minutes for the Key Stage 3 session. The results could lead to open rebellion. Oh, I like a way of thinking about that. Yeah. Like, so in what ways is the animal's reaction to like the dangers of propaganda? Like the fact that they weren't very educated. Think about it that way. I really like what your answer there. So the animal's delayed understanding of the situation shows their lack of education, which leaves them vulnerable to manipulation. Like, yeah, it is harsh and it's awful, but people who are less educated are psychologically more open or more likely to be open to manipulation by the elite. It's horrible. But they rely on others, like Muriel and Benjamin, to interpret information. And by the time they realize the truth, it is too late. This reflects how propaganda and limited knowledge prevent individuals from questioning authority or recognizing injustice. Orwell suggests that without critical thinking and education, people can be easily controlled and are unable to act effectively against wrongdoing. Yeah, so the fact that they were uneducated stopped them from helping Boxer and closing the gate quick enough. So yeah, shows fate. The pigs are selfish and betray people, so don't trust them. It starts a rebellion. Okay, last question then, and then we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll go to GCSE. So how does this extract suggest that loyalty and hard work can be exploited by those in power? And what wider message is Orwell conveying through this? Have a 20-second think about it. Both factors are linked. The lack of education would cause less intelligence, less management of solutions, more naivety, and less raising of a voice, and therefore it would cause harmful propaganda. Ooh, that's nice. That's a good answer. Okay, I'll show you what I put for this. So I said, Boxer's unwavering loyalty and work ethic ultimately leads to his downfall, or as those in power take advantage of his dedication without offering protection in return. His belief in hard work and obedience makes him easy to exploit, as he never questions authority. Orwell uses this to show that blind loyalty can be dangerous, especially in corrupt systems where leaders prioritize their own gain. The wider message is a warning that individuals must think critically and not place unconditional trust in authority, as this can lead to exploitation and betrayal. So when someone is in power, it can lead to propaganda. So that's all we got for you today. So we'll take 5 minutes. You're welcome to stay for GCSE. We're going to continue, I guess, starting to practice past paper questions in terms of AO 1B and AO 3. I'll stay around for a couple of minutes in case anybody wants to ask me any questions in between. But otherwise, you are welcome to stay for our practice of English. And I will load up the next Lookit. Anyone got any preferences of games they want to do for this next one if you are staying? He was a very loyal, hardworking individual on the farm. However, there is a trigger warning from Orwell that shows that even small factors can cause huge damage. Amazing. You want to play Crypto Hack again? Even though we just played Crypto Hack? Maybe we'll go with a different one. Monster Brawl has been recommended, so let's go Monster Brawl. Requested, sorry. Okay, right. I'll leave it on for a few minutes whilst people enter for GCSE. No. YouTube. Right, let's have a look. Ooh, a bit low on the ground in numbers for our quiz. Right, so I'll give you people a couple more minutes because there will be some late comers, I imagine. Although it is the holiday, so I don't expect too big numbers, I guess. I can't do the quiz with two people. Anyone else want to join us in our quiz? If there's only two, I'll have to forget the quiz. Okay, I'll literally give you to 17 minutes past. If no one else joins my quiz, we'll have to move on. We'll just do what I've got planned for today. Not letting you join. Keep trying. I don't think there's any issues on my end. Click start. I'm gonna give it a few minutes because I can't. With this, there's now 8 people not in my quiz. They're saying the room is closed. That should not be the case. Right, let me reload if it's saying the room is closed. I'll restart and I'll give you a minute to join. Ah, it is. Let me try reopen. It could possibly be this page has been open for a while. Okay, right, try now. I'll literally give you to 18 minutes past, so join now. Wise. Just head on head, I guess. Okay, there we go. Nice getting a few more. Nice, nice, nice. Nice. Okay. Cool. Get a few more people now. Good. Okay. We won't do as long. We'll do 5 minutes. This quiz is to do with creative writing, if I remember correctly. Okay, cool. We're getting some good numbers compared to people who are in the session. Right. I'll keep the number in the chat in case people want to join whilst we're playing, but we need to start playing because we've got running on limited time. So let's start. And I'll literally give you about 4 minutes because we do have things to do today. I've always wondered what happens if I click on people, but I don't want to like push you out of the game. Right, we're coming up to halfway through our game. I'll end it when it gets to 3 minutes because we've got some other stuff to do, more impressing things. But hopefully, this is good revision for you. That's that's very strange, because I have marked it. Um, I I mean, I wouldn't. I will check with him tomorrow. He's not been in today because he's ill. But I will check with him tomorrow because I emailed him your work last week. Um, so he should have it. To be fair, I did a bunch of marking last week that is currently sat on his desk over there. So it could possibly he's not been feeling particularly well the past few days. He just maybe hasn't got around to sending it. But yeah, I will chase him up about it. It has been marked. Mhm. Mhm. Right. 53 seconds left. Okay, the end of our game. Oh, SOS champion joined us last minute. We love it. Might not be our champion today. Okay, 20 seconds remaining. Okay, four, three, two, one. Let's see how everyone has done. Right, third place, second place, and first place. Baguette. Whoever Baguette is, random, but we love it. So let's view the reports. Come on, over 66. 59. What happened? 59%. Let's see. Okay. Slightly low at 37. Yeah, we like to see the 70s. 70s is good, a good place to be. I'll take it. Okay. Right. So last week we begun to look at AO3. And I got requested when I saw some of my students on Saturday in the Leeds office to start going through some past papers now. For you year 11s, it's coming up to exams. Exams start in what is it, just over a month? Well, probably about a month tomorrow or even today, I would imagine. So yeah, pressure's on, pressure's on. Time's clock's ticking. So I thought next time we should do crypto hack. We should. So what we're going to do is work our way through a past AO1B and AO3 question. The reason I've grouped these together is because they tend to come hand in hand. They're very similar questions. So I'm going to look at it today from the perspective of Edexcel because last week we did AQA examples. But like I'm going to say to you every week, the skills are exactly the same. So yeah, I don't think I'm excluding anybody. Um, the only difference is how the questions are asked. So AO1B is the question that on AQA is paper two, question two, and it's the 8 marker. And on Edexcel, it's paper two, question 7A, and it's only 6 marks. So it's not quite as heftily weighted in Edexcel. But it's really simple. It will say something like this. Use evidence from both texts. What similarities X, Y, Z? So for example, here, what similarities do the two people share in these extracts? I use evidence from both texts. So I won't go through this in detail. I'll leave this for Edexcel specific people, but I do know that most of you do AQA here. Um, we will, however, work our way through a past paper question for this. So, like I said, we talked through AO1 if you cast your minds back a few months ago. We've not done AO1 practice in quite a while, but it is worth 10% of your GCSE. So if you can really hammer it home, that's 10% solid for you guys. So I would make it a priority. Um, so in terms of the questions, I would always approach it in the steps as follows. I would always make sure to read and double check the question. Make sure to highlight exactly what it's asking of you. So there will always be a focus of the question, and you need to treat that focus very carefully. So, for example, the two texts here show the points of view of two men, Tillman and Pillon. What similarities do the men share? So the focus here is the similarities between the men. That is the focus. So if you're not talking about the men and their experiences or anything like that, you're not answering the question directly. And therefore you won't get marks. So it's always important to look at it like that. So I'll talk you through this example and then we'll focus more specifically on another paper. So the next thing I would do is I'd read through the entire texts and highlight the relevant quotes that you think. Now, I am going to preface this by saying for this question, you need a point evidence inference structure. So, not point evidence explain, no terminology, purely just this is my one sentence of point. Here's a quote to support what I'm saying, and here's a very slight inference. So, this kind of question doesn't require any language analysis, any structural analysis, or any deep analysis of any kind. It simply just needs one very simple inference, something that explains what's happening in the text beyond a literal level. Okay. Then a comparative words to compare it to the next text. So that could be similarly if you're looking for similarities. It could be contrastingly if you're looking for differences. So the next thing I would do is pick two quotes that you think are links. So for example, here I've picked these two extracts and I'm going to make the point both prisoners were planning on escaping. That's a similarity that I've picked out. The next thing I would do is I'd go through and highlight exactly which quotes are supporting my point. So for example, on the text, I can look at this one and say, actually, I'll read it in full to you, it probably makes sense. The call came on Friday night. His sister's voice on the phone. Can you come to Akim's parents' place tomorrow? To anyone listening in, there would have been nothing suspicious about the call. But Hans Joseph Tillman knew it was the signal he had been waiting for. The next day, he would be going under the Berlin Wall in the most daring mass escape ever attempted from East Germany. So things like the call, waiting for a signal, going under the Berlin Wall are all evidence to me that they were thinking of escaping. Equally, the text on the right describes a big raft, a plan to um, yeah, build a big raft in order to escape. So the point is, they both show plans to escape. That's a similarity. The evidence is that Tillman awaits for a coded phone call. Can you come to Asian's parents' place tomorrow? As the signal as he awaits a moment to attempt a mass escape under the Berlin Wall. Now, inference is a slightly harder thing to do, but like I said, we're not looking for any detailed explanation. We're just looking for one point that just goes slightly beyond the literal. So, for example, for this text over here, you could say his escape is the result of a detailed advanced planning. We know that. I can work that out. The fact that there's a call, the fact that there's a signal they've been waiting for, it tells me that this isn't just any old escape. This is like a detailed, pre-planned escape. There's rendezvous points. There's a tunnel being built. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything deep, just a really simple inference. And my inference is it's a detailed, pre-planned escape. What about this one then? Similarly, Papillion commissions a raft big enough for two, in sections that will fit together, draws a scale plan, organizes where each finished section will be dropped, and arranges with Matthew to hollow a place in the wall and to leave each piece in some different place. The inference I can make from this is that his breakout is also carefully organized. They've clearly planned it in advance. There's phased construction, there's hidden storage, there's coordination with accomplices. So the similarity here is that both prisoners were trying to escape, and then the inference is that both of the plans were detailed and pre-planned. Similarly, you might pick out these quotes. The man motioned them to take off their shoes to make as little noise as possible. They padded through the hallway in their socks, out the back door, and into the courtyard. They were not allowed to bring any baggage, only their papers. So there's evidence here that suggests that the point is both men are trying to avoid being caught. If we compare it to the one on the right, it says, I'll hollow out a place in a retaining wall. I'll take it out a big stone and make a kind of little cave. I'll only have to lift the stone and hide the wood and put it back in again. So they're both trying to evade capture, could be a point, and we know it because of those quotes. The inference that you could make is that for this one on the left, every step is to reduce the noise. Think about it. Why have they taken off their shoes? It's so that their shoes don't squeak. They've padded through the hallway in their socks to absorb the sounds. They've not brought any baggage because it would slow them down. So they're trying to evade suspicion and minimize the chance of discovery. Equally, the one on the right is anticipating interrogation. They're adapting their plans to make detection and incrimination less likely by hollowing out the wall, hiding. So again, both of them are avoiding being caught. Okay, now the one that we'll work through together, and I'll get you to put some answers in the chat, is this text here. So, like before, I would always take the same first step, highlight the key points of the question. So, the two texts show people who decide to become doctors. What similarities do the two people share in these extracts? So, we're looking for very simple, pardon me, similarities. And the focus here is on the shared attributes of the doctors. So not on the environment, not on the setting, not on like physical things about the doctors, but about shared attributes. So again, I'd go through and pick out relevant quotes. So I'll read these two extracts to you, and I've given you the point. So, as you might imagine, learning every single aspect of the human body's anatomy and physiology, plus each possible way it can malfunction, is a fairly gargantuan undertaking. But the buzz of knowing I was going to become a doctor one day, such a big deal you get to literally change your name like a superhero or an intentional international criminal, propelled me towards my goal through the 6 long years. Compare that to not to mention the time. It takes years of study. Then afterwards, how will you get patients? People would never consult a woman doctor. Forget it. It can't be done. There are too many obstacles. Immediately, Elizabeth's interest in the project soared. I can't do it. I shall do it. With each new negative response, she dug her heels in deeper, tried to stop me. So you could argue the similarity here is that both doctors were determined and persistent in pursuing medicine. We know that because look on the left. She describes it as a gargantuan undertaking. So she acknowledges that it's a really difficult, huge task. But she has a buzz. She wants to be a doctor. She feels propelled to keep going through these 6 years. So there's a sense of determination there. Look on the ones on the right. She said that, okay, there's going to be problems along the way. People would never consult a woman doctor. There's too many obstacles. But then she contrasts that with saying, like, people say I can't do it. Well, I will prove them wrong and I will do it. Try to stop me. There's a determination to both of these extracts. So there's my evidence, my inference that I could make in terms of what this tells me about their attributes as a doctor is that the persistence in completing demanding training shows strong long-term commitment to becoming a doctor despite the workload. So they're persistent. They're not only determined, but they are persistent and they're committed. So that's me going slightly beyond. Like the text hasn't directly told me that, but I can simply work it out by putting myself in that situation and using the words in front of me. In terms of the inference on the right, um, I could say something along the lines of her determination grows in response to opposition, showing a tenacious, goal-driven character that refuses to accept barriers. Yeah, think about it. Like she acknowledges that there are hardships in society, but then she chooses to overcome them anyway, and that's her choice. Okay. Right. So this next one then. I've highlighted the quotes for you, and in the chat, I want you to think about what the point is that you could make. What is the similarity between the shared attributes between these two doctors? So, firstly, personally, I don't remember medicine ever being an active career decision. I went to the kind of school that's essentially a sausage factory designed to churn out medics, lawyers, and cabinet members. And my dad was a doctor. It was written on the walls. Compare that to the thought of becoming a doctor struck Elizabeth as preposterous. Her reaction to her friend's idea was revulsion. The very thought of dwelling on the physical structure of the body and its various ailments filled me with disgust. At the age of 6, Elizabeth told her older sisters that she didn't know what she would be when she grew up, but it would be something hard. Okay, what point could you make in terms of how these two doctors are similar? Anything? I like your point, but not necessarily the most academic. Any ideas? Anything simple that you can think about the difference between these two quotes? Any ideas in the chat? Oh, I might have to tell you what I thought. They're not a doctor yet. Yeah, I mean it is true. Did they? Well, they are when they wrote this. Both have confusion. The doctors have the same goal, but they both have setbacks. Yeah, intentionally, like they didn't know what they wanted to do for a career initially. Like neither of them set out to be a doctor. Like she said here on the left that she never remembered medicine being an active career decision. Similarly, on the right, Elizabeth said that it struck her as preposterous, the idea of becoming a doctor. So neither of them initially set out to become a doctor. Both were inspired, or forced, or given no choice. Exactly. So it wasn't their initial primary goal, basically. And we have the evidence here. Now, if I was thinking about a deeper inference, what could you say about the doctor on the left's life? I think somebody's already kind of mentioned it, but how did they become a doctor? What does it suggest about the career path to become a doctor based on the text on the left? Any ideas? Any ideas? Okay, I'll have to tell you what I said. Um, So yeah, we kind of know that medicine was something that she didn't initially want to do. She says it wasn't an active career decision, but she went to a school that churns out all these doctors and lawyers and things. And her dad was a doctor, possibly following the crowd from school or trying to make people proud. It's challenging as they have to turn them out. Yeah, possibly. I do think, thinking about her life specifically though, like it's something that he drifts into because of expectation. It's not something that's like a self-chosen ambition or a drive. It's something that they've stumbled into because they were either forced or at least pushed into it. Compare that to the one on the right. Like, she has no fixed career in mind. In fact, she actively rejects medicine. She calls it preposterous. She told her sisters that she had no idea what she wanted to be when she grew up. However, it became a deliberate goal very, very slowly. So neither of them knew what they wanted to do, but initially found their way into becoming a doctor. Okay, we'll do one more and then we'll do some AO3 practice. So I've given you again the point of this one. So it says on the left, because medical schools are oversubscribed tenfold, all candidates must be interviewed with only those who perform best under a grilling being awarded a place. It's assumed all applicants are on course for straight A's at A level. So universities base their decisions on non-academic criteria. This, of course, makes sense. A doctor must be psychologically fit, able to make decisions under a terrifying amount of pressure, able to break bad news to anguished relatives, able to deal with death on a daily basis. Compare that to the one on the right, which says, this was an astonishing suggestion. Women did not study medicine until 1845. Impractical. You wouldn't get into medical school if you do not have the money to pay for it, not to mention the time. It takes years of study. Then afterwards, how will you get patients? People would never consult a woman doctor. Forget it. It can't be done. There are too many obstacles. So the similarity that you could make is that both doctors do openly acknowledge the difficulties in becoming a doctor, albeit differences. So yes, both find it difficult. But I guess the one on the left, the difficulty comes from not society, but academics. Like everyone is on the course to get the same grades. So it's more of a academic and personal um, choice from universities. Whereas on the right, it's not really academics that are limiting her, it's more society. Like when this was written in the 1800s, it wasn't normal for women to become doctors. So, yeah, she's just kind of approaching it from that perspective. So the difficulty comes from different places. So the inference that you could make is that even before and during his training, he recognizes both the academic demands and the emotional strain involved in qualifying and working as a doctor. Because he mentions the academic requirements and he also mentions the pressure and the overwhelming expectations of becoming a doctor. Compare that to the one on the right, who clearly understands that the path to medicine is obstructed by social barriers, financial and academic demands, and her own temperament, yet chooses it knowing there are difficulties to lie ahead. Yeah, so there is a similarity. They do acknowledge difficulties, but the difficulties spur from different places, I guess. Okay, so that's AO1B. It doesn't need anything more complicated than that. It's literally point, evidence, very simple explanation. No language devices, none of that. Now, I want to focus a little bit more on AO3 just for 20 minutes. We looked last week at sort of beginning to go through AO3 a little bit, but we looked at it under the lens of AQA. Um, so let's briefly look at it for Edexcel. Your question would look like this. So it's paper 2, question 7b. Compare how the writers of text 1 and text 2 present ideas and perspectives about. And if we're sticking with the same text, it's about choosing a career. So always make sure to go through and again, really highlight and understand the focus of the question. Because it's not about their career paths, it's not about them as individuals, it's about choosing a career. So, yeah, how is it? How's their experiences of navigating and choosing a career? And we looked last week at what is meant by ideas and perspectives, which we'll come back onto in a second. But for those of you who do Edexcel, you need to be talking about similarities and differences. And this is the difference between AO3 and AO1 is that you do need to mention language and structural devices, albeit very simply, but you do need to have them in there. And you also need well-chosen evidence. So instead of only picking one quote like we did for AO1, I would pick multiple supporting quotes for AO2. So it's slightly more advanced. And for Edexcel, you get about 16 minutes for this. So they're not expecting anything major, two or three differences or similarities. So last week, I introduced you to what is meant by assessment objective 3. When it says compare, it means similarities versus differences. When it says ideas and perspectives, it means the main message that the reader is trying to convey. Remember, this is non-fiction. So writing is always done with a purpose. So you've got to be thinking about, why has this writing been done? What is the author trying to tell me? What is the message to take away? Now, the difference is between ideas and perspectives is that a perspective is their viewpoint. What they think and feel about a topic, about the message that they're trying to convey. And as always, I would recommend Peter paragraphs for this because you need to mention terminology. So you do need to do slightly more detailed analyses than the previous question. So you do need to be thinking about the effects of language and structure. Not quite in as much detail as something like AO2, but you do need it in there. And I cannot stress that enough. You need it in there. So please. Also, referencing reader. Again, not as strongly as AO2, so it doesn't need to be anything extensive, but do reference the reader. Okay, so this is the one that we're going to focus on for the next 20 minutes. Compare how the writers of text 1 and 2 present ideas and perspectives about choosing a career. Now, I want to give you, it's always useful to read the contextual information that they've given you about the text because it will give you some idea about their purpose. So, the first one was written in 2017, so fairly modern as a text. It's from The Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor. In this edited extract from a collection of his diary entries, Adam Kay shares his experience of deciding on medicine as a career. Now, alternatively, we're comparing that to a text that was written in 1821. So Elizabeth Blackwell was born in Bristol. Her family emigrated to the United States of America, where she was a child, when she was a child, sorry, and she went on to become the first woman doctor in America. In this edited extract from a book about her life, she is a teacher. She is a teacher considering this new career. So we've got to consider the time periods that both of these are set to really understand their purpose. Now, as I said, I'm going to reiterate this is non-fiction. So the writing has been done for a reason. Now, I've highlighted the reasons here. The first one is to inform. The second one, I would argue, is to persuade. So the one that's more modern is to inform. The one that was about 1821 is to persuade. And it's important that you acknowledge that because it will influence your effect on you as a reader through the language and structure that has been used. So it's worth thinking about. Now, I'm not going to read through all of it. They're in the slides if you want. I'll just use the quotes that I've picked out and we'll think about the similarities and differences. So I'm using D here to show difference. So, personally, I don't remember medicine ever being an active career decision. I went to the kind of school that is essentially a sausage factory designed to churn out medics, lawyers, and cabinet members. And my dad was a doctor. It was written on the walls. So, in terms of this quote here, how does that, and I'm asking you, answer in the chat, how does that, or what does that show about this doctor's path in choosing their career? Is there anything it tells us about something that may affect their choice in career? Also, think about if there's any language and structural devices here. Again, yeah, think about language and structure. I'll give you 30 seconds for any answers. So, in terms of a point that we could certainly make, is in my opinion, I think it shows that choosing a career, it tells us about the challenges of becoming a doctor. Anything more specific? What kind of challenges? The use of the metaphor that was written on the walls. Yeah, lovely. So I personally think this is challenge due to external factors. It tells me that their choosing a career is definitely based on external factors. And I think there's a few kind of language and structural devices you could pick out here. For example, the sausage factory metaphor, the metaphor and symbolism of the written being written on the walls. Both things I would pick out here. Now, if we're thinking about explaining these and what they actually suggest, is to me, it suggests like a lack of individuality, almost an influence of fate, almost like her choice has been predetermined for her. Like the fact that you've got the sausage factory, the metaphor of, I guess, I wouldn't want to say fate again, but lack of control. Like it's her destiny. She's going to have this job. Like the school that she was in just mindlessly churns out clones. So it's almost destined. The fact you've got it's written on the walls, that idiom there is very symbolic of fate. It almost alludes back to a biblical story about writing on the inside of a pyramid and how that foreshadowed doom and predicted and doom. So yeah, all of that kind of shows us is heavily influenced. Sausage Factory gives a humorous tone, which shows the ease of becoming a doctor, where the metaphor of obstacles shows how hard it will be. Nice. What is an idiom? So an idiom is like a phrase that we all know that has a bit of a deeper meaning. So written on the walls is a saying that means like it's predetermined. So if something is written on the walls, it's like going to happen, basically. Um, yeah. Okay, compare that to this one down here. In practical, you won't get into medical school. If you do, you won't have the money to pay for it, not to mention the time. It takes years of study, then afterwards, how will you get patients? People would never consult a woman doctor. Forget it, it can't be done. There are too many obstacles. Immediately, Elizabeth's interest in the project soared. I can't do it. I shall do it. So how does that contrast to up here, do you think, in terms of choosing a career? This one was heavily influenced by external factors. How is it different to the one down here? Any ideas? I'll talk just for ease of time, I'll talk you through what I said. Oh no. This one is driven by determination. I love it. It's self-driven, isn't it? I think the difference is that this text shows that career choice is personal and driven. Yeah, that determination. And the terminology as evidence for that is almost this juxtaposition. You have a list of very pessimistic downfalls, the years of study, the rhetorical question of how you get patients, the people would never consult a woman doctor, all of these very pessimistic things are in direct contrast to her, I shall do it. So it shows that modal verb shows how determined she is, almost presenting this idea that making a career choice is independent. It's down to you. It's down to your control. Like you do have control over it. And as a reader, that's quite empowering and hopeful compared to the first one, which is bleak. Yeah, it's the difference. There's a lot of direct address which show how it's directly targeted. One of the texts explains it in a jokey way. Okay. Oh no, I've done the same thing. Let me just animate that. Okay, slideshow. Okay, think about these next two then, and what the difference might be here. During the day, the job was manageable, if mind-numbing and insanely time-consuming. You turn up every morning for the ward round, where the whole team of doctors pootles past each of their patients. You trail behind like a hypnotized duckling, your head cocked to one side in a caring manner, noting down every pronouncement from your seniors. Then you spend the rest of your working day filling in forms, making phone calls. Not really what I trained so hard for. So, how is the career presented? How is choosing a career presented if we're trying to make a point about this extract? What kind of tone do they have? What are they trying to say about choosing a career? Any ideas? Mind-numbing depicts psychological distress, and headcock symbolizes uniformity due to their similar movements. Oh, lovely. Nice, you're thinking absolutely correctly here. Yeah, you've got this almost, to me, cynicism, disappointment. Like choosing a career isn't a positive thing. It can lead to degradation and distress, like you said. And I think you've got like think here like the simile of the hypnotized duckling, that bleak tone, the hyperbolic adjectives of mind-numbing, time-consuming, the informal and disheartening tone of that are not really what I'd trained so hard for. All of it shows, like Ashley said, the uniformity, the distress of it, how boring it is, how disheartening it is, the lack of fulfillment, exactly. So it's almost trying to tell us that it just diminishes the appeal for the profession and emphasizes how unstimulating it is. And so the effect on the reader is one of delusionment. Now, compare it to this below. Elizabeth was getting interested. New knowledge gave her a new angle of vision. She was beginning to see the world as a physician sees it. At this stage of her education, she was truly confronting her fears and finickiness, so that she would be able to plunge into medical school, excelling at it. When finally they let her, she had moved from books to anatomical models, from cadavers to living patients. She was becoming ready to become a doctor. What kind of tone is there in this one that is different to the one above? Any ideas? Optimism, nice. She's almost excited. Yeah, I think in contrast, you kind of get this job that is fulfilling. Like in the one above, it's not fulfilling at all. It's like so regimented, so boring, so monotonous. But in the one below, it's fulfilling and meaningful. You have the optimistic tone. Like we have the metaphor of the angle of vision, the repetition of see the world as a physician sees it, like she's almost being enlightened. The emotive language, the hopeful verbs of plunging and excelling, the triplet to show her progressive career as she moved from books to models to cadavers to living patients, the repetition of becoming, all highlighting growth and enrichment. So it's presenting her career as enriching and transformative. She feels deeply fulfilled due to personal growth and improvement, showing it's rewarding. So she finds excitement and purpose. Therefore, the reader is inspired, is more determined. Okay, we'll do possibly one or two more and then we'll call it an evening. So let's think about a similarity because we looked at two differences, but you might come across similarities. So, for example, this of course makes sense. A doctor must be psychologically fit, able to make decisions under a terrifying amount of pressure, able to break bad news to anguished relatives, able to deal with death on a daily basis. They must have something that cannot be memorized and graded. A great doctor must have a huge heart and a distended aorta, through which pumps a vast lake of compassion and human kindness. So, in terms of how it's presenting choosing a career, I think, would you agree that it's quite challenging? It acknowledges the challenge of becoming a doctor, but it still presents it as almost worthwhile and admirable. We know that because you've got that triplet of they're able to make decisions, terrifying amount of pressure, break bad news. All of that is presenting challenge, but that contrasts to the list of positive attributes, like the metaphor of having a huge heart, the distended aorta, the vast lake of compassion, the emotive language. So it's presenting medicine as demanding, but a very prestigious profession nonetheless. So it requires a lot of resilience. It's not easy, but it certainly is an admirable profession nonetheless. And as we read through this next bit, think about how that's similar. Think about if there's any language device in here that presents it in a similar way. So, given her character, shy, squeamish, exceedingly proper, repulsed by the physical and especially by disease, medicine would be the hardest of all of the professions she might choose. Given her character, tough, obstinate, uh, constantly self-challenging, forever testing her own limits, the fact that medicine would be hardest for her recommended it. With each new negative response, she dug her heels in deeper, try and stop me. Is there any language devices in there that presents the job as in a similar way, that it's challenging, but it's also rewarding and admirable and prestigious? Any ideas? Give you 20 seconds and I'll tell you. Okay, what technique is the last sentence where they link it to medical language? So you could be a semantic field if it's all yeah, specifically medical related, or the imagery of medicine. Okay, I'll tell you what I said. Look at the listing here that's juxtaposed to her traits. So she's listed characteristics of a doc of like negative characteristics of herself, that she's squeamish, repulsed by disease, etc. And she's juxtaposed that to the professions required, the traits required to become a doctor. Um, to her positive traits, that she's tough, obstinate, etc. So it shows that medicine is challenging, but it's a very noble and rewarding challenge, almost amplifying doctors to the saint status. So again, it's inspiring, and the first one was encouraged respect. Right, so we'll do one more, and then we'll call it an evening. So again, think about similarity. Oh, I've not added the animation in. Hey, think about the similarity here. Because medical schools are oversubscribed tenfold. All candidates must be interviewed, with only those who perform best under a grilling being awarded a place. It's assumed all applicants are on course for straight A's A level. So universities base their decisions on non-academic criteria. This, of course, makes sense. A doctor must be psychologically fit. So, in terms of presenting choosing a career, what could our point be there? How is it presenting choosing a career? Now, if we think about similarities, it might help to read the next one. Impractical. You won't get into medical school. If you do, you won't have any money to pay for it, not to mention the time. It takes years of study. Then afterwards, how we get patients. People would never consult a woman doctor. Forget it, it can't be done. There are too many obstacles. What is the similarity between those two extracts? Any ideas? Oh, okay. I'll tell you. So, think about it very simply. It highlights that choosing a medical career often involves significant challenges. Um, it's not worth becoming a doctor. Possibly. I don't know. I do think both of them do show it as rewarding and admirable, but I think it's more the challenge it takes to get there. For example, the hyperbole of the tenfold oversubscription, the metaphor of being grilled in order to get in. Um, yeah, it's a very passive tone, almost showing how pressurizing and competitive it is to become a doctor, as you're constantly being compared to other people. And despite all the academic effort that you might put in, decisions could ultimately come down to your interests and extracurriculars. So it almost diminishes academic achievements. So, in terms of being a reader, it presents the idea that being a doctor is almost quite exclusive and not very easily accessible. So, again, it's quite a bleak atmosphere. Compare that to the bottom one. That also shows there are significant challenges in becoming a doctor. But like we said for the AO1 question, the challenges do arise from a different place. So, though both of them have challenges in terms of becoming a doctor, the challenges in the more modern text are more to do with like academics not being able to stand out, having extracurriculars. But the challenges in text two are social. There's social boundaries and obstacles. People didn't believe at that time that women should be doctors. So she is transcending the mold a little bit. So both of them show exclusivity, but text two shows that exclusivity comes from gender and social norms, not necessarily from competition, but societal pressures. And we know that through the listing of the negative statements in dialogue form, the modal verb of won't. People didn't believe at that time that women should become doctors. Like you won't become a doctor. Yeah, so there's a very pessimistic tone. And so, again, the reader understands that it's not necessarily accessible. Okay, I did have one more, but we'll call it an evening. Right, well done. Some nice answers coming through. I'll stay around for the next few minutes in case anyone has any questions. Um, but we'll start running some past papers now. Um, yeah, so keep revising. Year 11s, you can do this. Only a month. Have a lovely holiday otherwise. Um, Have I received your Lady Macbeth essay? Is that the one that I already marked? Or is that a different one? I can't remember. Because I've definitely marked something of yours. Because that's the one that you've asked me about that I've sent back to Mr. Siddiqui. Is this a different one? I sent it this week. I'll have a look at my emails. I keep saying this to you every week, but I feel like I'm really busy every week. I've basically been doing loads of revision sessions, so I've literally not even caught up with my own marking yet, in terms of A-level stuff I have to do. Um, but yeah, I'll have a look because I probably have that in my emails somewhere. Um, Michel says, I have a question for language paper one assessment for AQA after the holidays. So do you have any tips on what to remember? Um, In terms of memory, revise all of the language and structural techniques and go through and revise all of the structures for answers of each question. So you should know before going into the exam what specific structure is required for answering a question, as well as how many paragraphs you need. But certainly for language and structure, the more language and structural devices you know, the better you'll do, essentially. I would go in with certain effects on the reader already in your head as well. AQA, I was saying this to my revision session on Thursday. AQA, for some reason, love like violent texts. For some reason, they love like conflict. So there's always like a claustrophobic atmosphere in there somewhere. There's always like entrapment somewhere. Like, so go in with sort of atmospheres and effects on the reader in mind because they will probably come up. But yeah, that's kind of really my advice. Question four. Is this for paper one or paper two? Question four, not question. Assessment four. Paper one. But is the question for belongs to an assessment four? Which paper is this? Paper one, question four. Oh, the AO4 stuff. Okay. Yeah. That's a debate question about interpretation. So the best thing you can do for that is like again language and structure because you do need to be mentioning language and structure in your answer. But it's really a debate question. Um, because it will give you a statement to how much you agree, and it's kind of up to you to decide if you agree or disagree with the statement. So it really will be up to you on the day whether you agree or disagree. But remember, they're looking for interpretation. So because it's 20 marks and because you've only got like 22 minutes, they're not expecting more than about three paragraphs. But yeah, think about whether you agree or disagree. And you should always be considering counter arguments as well. Like question four is all about can you form an opinion, but also recognize that other people could read it differently to you? And that's really what question four is about. So you're looking for alternative interpretations. But as long as you can support your view with language and structure, then you'll get good marks for it. Yeah. Okay. Oops. I normally do one paragraph explaining why I agree in the first half of the statement, counter argument paragraph, and the same for the second part, and finally a conclusion. Yeah, I think that's quite good because the point is that you have interpretation in there. Like that's what's going to get you into that band four. It literally says in the mark scheme that you can't get into band four without multiple interpretations. So it's good that you have counter arguments because that's what's the higher level skill. I would personally, and this is just a tip from me, I would try and weave counter arguments into your paragraph. I'd make it clear what your opinion is, but I would, and then I'd go and support that. But then I'd also just maybe at the end of a paragraph kind of say, like, however, this could be viewed this way as well. Like, I wouldn't necessarily make a counter argument like a full paragraph, only because 75% of the marks for that question aren't anything to do with counter marks. So you need to be really getting the variety in there before considering counter arguments. So yeah, I'd kind of make sure you have three paragraphs of your opinion, and maybe in two of those paragraphs provide counter arguments and alternative interpretations. But really prioritize range, like yeah, different quotes and language and structure devices. No problem. Have a lovely holiday.